Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Madiha.
Walaikum assalam.
How are you? I'm good, alhamdulillah. How are you?
Doing good, alhamdulillah.
So I'm excited. We're here today doing our first episode of Beyond the Hijab Ramadan edition. I think we should tell our listeners what Beyond the Hijab is and what this podcast is about. So how about you go ahead and share your thoughts on it?
I think the way the title sounds, our goal with this podcast is that it's recognizing that, women are more than just the hijab, and how we're so used to being, any conversation you have, any discourse, any social circle, it's always about like the scarf, women's dress, women's bodies.
Yeah.
And so I know that when you approached me with this idea, it was coming from everything you've seen and heard in your experiences as a scholar and mine about we're just so much more than that. And we'll go into that, inshallah, when we launch the next few episodes that aren't focused on just Ramadan.
Yeah.
And the point of it is that we are so much more than that. And let's focus on that as the bigger picture, inshallah.
Yeah. And then, we actually, like when I was coming up with the idea, I thought that there was, like, it's really important for sisters to have something that they can listen to and also relate to.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the whole objective about it. Because there's a lot of material online, right? But it's also like who is saying it, what is being said, is it too liberal, is it too extremist, right? We are the moderate ummah, we're ummatan wasata. So, alhamdulillah, coming up with something and talking about something that's relatable and reasonable. This is our Ramadan edition. So inshallah, this episode and the next two are going to be more focused on a woman's Ramadan experience. Yeah. And then after Eid, inshallah, we're planning to add more episodes. I think we should introduce ourselves.
Might help.
So yes. My name is Maryam. I am the resident scholar of ISB. I graduated from Darul Uloom in 2008, 2009. Alhamdulillah, I have been teaching Islamic studies and Quran ever since, and I have a bachelor's in health administration systems. And I teach middle school and high school Islamic studies, and as well as serve the ISB community in different capacities as a resident scholar. And I met you like a lot of years ago. A lot of years ago. I met you like a decade ago.
And
you were actually the person who reached out to me to speak at my first SIDA conference. And ever since then, alhamdulillah. So that credit goes to you.
Oh, no, alhamdulillah. Just make dua for me and the kids, and I'll take it. No, and I pushed you for it because we need it. Women need it. And so I'm glad that you are making that happen, inshallah, amongst others, of course.
Yes.
So I'm Madiha Tahseen. I am professionally, I'm a developmental psychologist. I have my PhD in developmental psychology from UMBC. And I have been part of the ISB community. I'm not going to say how long, but it's been a long time. My hometown is not ISB though; it is ICM in Gaithersburg. But
our hometowns are the same.
Oh yeah, right. You're right. I remember
same counties.
That. Yeah. But I came to ISB for grad school, and then ended up staying here, and I've been part of the community for a very long time.
Okay. So inshallah, as Ramadan has started, we felt that we feel that it's beneficial for us to talk about different things that women experience in Ramadan, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not just about fasting. It's not just about abstaining from food. Ramadan, of course, is much more than that, right? From breaking bad habits to becoming consistent in good habits, right? So I think it's important to start the discussion of, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us to fast in the first place?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And what does Ramadan mean to us more than just fasting?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really important to have that conversation because, inshallah, I think what we'll do is we'll frame our 3 episodes for Ramadan with that at the heart of it, which is always take yourself back to the purpose of Ramadan. And, when you're saying that it's not just about fasting, it's not just about food, honestly, I don't think that that's as common sense as it, it's as common knowledge as you're saying it is. For me personally, I don't think that it really click to me that Ramadan is more than just about food or fasting, because the first thing that you're taught, that I was taught, in all of, Sunday school from parents, it's like, oh, it's about compassion for the poor, right? You fast so that you can appreciate the blessings you have, and that you can have more sympathy for the fortunate. Those are all great things. I'm not saying those virtues are not good. They're absolutely good. But it always made me think about, and I just accepted that. And I was like, okay, Ramadan's about how it should build my sympathy for people who don't have, and how I should appreciate. And I just, went with that, experienced my Ramadans. But then, I didn't truly hit me that there's something about that doesn't click until I was in graduate school, and I had Shakir, my firstborn. It's a young baby. I'm nursing, so I really couldn't fast the way that I wanted to fast. And then I was also in graduate school, so the time that I had to actually do things like go to Taraweeh or really like commit to, what's in them, none of it was there. And so when I became a first-time mom, I'm just like, if Ramadan is about food and it's about having compassion for others, like, I'm so tired I can barely survive. This does not feel like this is not clicking to me. Like, I can't, I'm not fasting, right? So I wasn't fasting. That was the first time that, beyond other reasons like menstruation, that like I wasn't fasting. So I'm like, then how am I supposed to, I'm eating. Like, I'm walking around all day eating, doing my normal routine. So how am I supposed to have compassion for, people who don't have food, but I'm eating? And that's when I was like, wait, I need to step back. There's no way that Ramadan is just about like, supposed to just build compassion in you for poor people, right?
Yeah.
Or for the less fortunate. Like, that just sounds so I was like, there's no way, because when I'm not fasting, I'm not doing that because I'm actually eating.
Yeah.
So then what's the point of Ramadan for me there? And so I went back then to the original source that teaches us about Islam, of course, and the purpose of fasting, which was the ayah in the Quran. And that's when I was like, wait, it doesn't even talk about compassion. The purpose is not compassion. That's not it. It's a benefit, right? It's a good thing for us to learn, but that's not the source. That's not our goal. So
Definitely, because when you're saying, like the example that you just gave right now, right? Then, as you said, when we're not fasting, then how are we having empathy? And then on top of that, also, even if we are fasting, our lifestyles are much different than those people that do not are unable to have sufficient meals,
Right.
And then they're still hard working throughout the day. Some of them are working in scorching heat. Some of them are working in really terrible conditions, right? So sometimes,
or we know that we're getting a good meal at iftar.
Yeah.
Where other people who aren't as well off as us are still having to fast. So if the point was for us to have compassion for them, then would they not be fasting, right? And then they're still fasting, and then what iftar is facing them? What are they going to break? So I'm sorry I cut you off, but I was like, that all of that just used to bother me a lot.
Because actually, when you look at the ayah in the Quran that talks about why we're told to fast, right? It's in Surah Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that fasting has been prescribed for you, just like it was prescribed for those before you, so that you will become mindful of Him, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The word that's actually used is, so the last two words of that ayah is لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, right? So tattaqun comes from the word taqwa, right? So some people will translate it as so that you will have taqwa, right? Others will translate it as, then they'll go into the taqwa translation of like consciousness, being conscious of Allah, being aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Right.
But I wanted to take a moment to talk about, now that we have established that the reason why we fast, right, is so that we can gain taqwa. Right. So it's really important to define what taqwa is.
Yeah.
Because the way you describe taqwa, right, it affects how you're going to have your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as soon as we say that taqwa means, or the people that have taqwa are those that fear Allah.
Right.
That fear Allah, right?
Yeah.
So that fear, what does that fear look like, right? When I was younger, and I'm pretty sure you have been through that too, it's like the way you are made to fear Allah is as if He's waiting for you to do something bad and then He's going to punish you.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like every single thing is going to somehow make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mad at you.
Yeah.
right? The
It's like the
elements,
vengeful God,
Yeah.
astaghfirullah, but like the punishing God, if you don't do this, Allah is gonna be mad at you.
Mad at you.
You're gonna
Yeah.
go to Jahannam. Like you're gonna, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like the attributes of mercy, the attributes of,
Love.
Ar-Rahman, Al-Wadud, At-Tawwab. All of those are put aside.
Yep.
Right? And we just talk about this fear, or this, being scared of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah.
So the first thing is to really understand that when we say fear Allah, it's not that, he is because of his wrath or because of his anger. It's that he is your Rabb, right? He's your caretaker. And you don't want to do something that's going to disappoint him.
Right.
Right? So there's a fear where you're scared of somebody because they're going to punish you. And that's the only reason you're scared of them.
Yeah.
But then sometimes you're scared of someone, or you fear somebody because of your respect and your love for them.
Right. Right. And can I ask you, like, in terms of the translation of it, is that it goes beyond fear, right? It's that consciousness that you're talking about.
Consciousness.
It's that awareness of him. And it's not awareness that's based on punishment, and it's awareness of sheer love and respect for this creator who's maintaining you and taking care of you.
Yeah.
Right?
So
that like, would that be an accurate way to think about it?
Yeah, because the reason why I was saying fear is that that's actually a misconception, right? That anytime we're defining taqwa, we limit this to like, just to fear. But it's actually because you're so conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you prevent yourself from doing something that could make him upset.
Right.
Or is going to make him upset. There is a conversation between Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu and Ubay bin Ka'b, right? So he asks him about taqwa, and I'm paraphrasing it. So he asks him about taqwa, and he says that, have you ever walked through a garden that has plants that have thorns?
Yeah.
Right? So what you do is you kind of like hold your clothes together so that they're not gonna stick to the thorns and they're not gonna get torn, right? Literally, that's what taqwa is, that you kind of hold yourself and conduct yourself in a way that something that could possibly be a sin, even, you stay away from it.
Yeah.
Right? And the reason why, so there's a status of like, we all have different levels of practice, right? Taqwa is actually one of the highest levels of practice.
Right.
And that is one of the reasons why Ramadan, or fasting in Ramadan, is prescribed. So it's a transformation.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
It's a transformation. Ramadan is supposed to be transformative.
Yeah.
Right? The way we enter Ramadan, or the way we are prior to Ramadan,
Yeah.
the fasting is not just supposed to be about the big suhoor and the big iftar, right? And like the gatherings in the masjid. It is actually about, how am I going to reach that level of taqwa? How am I going to reach that level of consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
Exactly. It's your relationship with Allah. You fast because of your relationship with Allah, not these other things that we talked about. We started this episode with about like compassion or just gratefulness. Those are great things, but the heart of it is building that relationship about him. How do you think of him? How are you aware of him? How are you paying attention to him? And then how are you improving that relationship? That's what we should all be focusing on in Ramadan. Because you can do that when you're on your period and you are eating. You can do that when you're nursing and you're not fasting. You can, you know what I mean? Or you're sick. And when I heard that, that's when it clicked to me. And I was like, this is the true purpose of Ramadan. And this is what I need to remind myself, no matter what stage of life I'm at.
Yeah, it's like the essence of Ramadan. Because then if you take out, like, for example, I understand that, child's birth and periods, that's something that's relatable to women, right? But there are a lot of men that are unable to fast because they have some chronic illness. Right? So then just because they can't fast in Ramadan, that doesn't mean that you don't transform your actions, right? So it's not that you can't observe Ramadan still. You have to observe it because you're supposed to become more conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that time. Right? So my question for you is that, okay, so now this is the first 10 days of Ramadan. Right? What are some of the tips you can say, or like, what are some of the action items that as women we can keep in mind to reach this goal of becoming conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
So when I had that like epiphany about the purpose of Ramadan, which is that building that relationship or having that taqwa of Allah, right? Which is what you just described. When I had that, then it gave me a chance to say, okay, then I'm going to approach each Ramadan with using it as a chance to build, first to reflect on who I am, and then set goals and actually build habits. I don't want to be a Ramadan Muslim. Like, I want to be a warrior in Ramadan, which you're gonna be, because Ramadan is a special vibe that you just cannot create outside of Ramadan, right? But and definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that the Sahabas, for example, approached Ramadan, they weren't thinking about Ramadan like 3 days before Ramadan, right? It was months. Like, Shaban served a purpose. It served a purpose to prep you for Ramadan. Why? Because you're approaching it as a journey of improvement. Like, okay, now is this time to tighten up and figure out what do I want to work on, and then make a plan for it, and then use Ramadan to do that, so that I leave Ramadan a little bit better than I was, but with a plan going forward. So that's what I would suggest for all of us as women is, given our situations, whatever those may be, how can I use this month to build a journey of self-improvement so that I can improve my relationship with Allah, that it's a little bit better than before. Like, can I leave Ramadan saying, I have a habit that I didn't have before, or that I'm a little bit closer to Allah than I was before, and that next Ramadan I want to be even better. So I would say this start of Ramadan, first start with some self-reflection, right? You have to know yourself, like, pay attention to, like, there's so many to-do lists all of us have. Like, I'm gonna do all these good deeds. I'm gonna do, I'm gonna try to avoid these things. I would say, and Sheikh Omar Sulaiman had a really good talk on this just recently I listened to, about where he's saying focus on the things that you want not to do, right? Because that helps you come closer to Allah, which is the point. So I would say start with thinking about, it's your personal journey. So it's not a competition with anybody else, where anybody else is doing it in their Ramadan, right? It's your personal journey for getting close to Him. So what is your relationship with Him? What is it that you feel like you're missing in your relationship with Him? Figure that out. Use this time. Maybe you're someone that's like, you want to know Him better. And so you decide, I'm going to focus on His names of, the names of Allah this month. That's my goal, right? Or maybe you're someone that's like, I'm not that close to the Quran, and everyone keeps talking about how the Quran is so important and it's the way to know, okay, so then maybe that's your goal. So first start that personal attempt of like, what is my personal areas of weakness that I need to improve to get closer to Him? And then build a plan for that. And in that plan, like, again, and you can talk more on this, but like, it's not about big, ginormous goals, right? It's about Allah loves the small, it doesn't matter how big the deed is, but the one that's consistent, the one that you keep trying and failing and trying and failing. Yeah. So when you're setting your goals, like, don't go overboard. Pick what makes sense for you. You know what I mean? Like, with your situation. I remember one Ramadan, like I said, when like Shakir was a baby, the most I could do was pray 2 rakahs at home for Taraweeh, because I couldn't go to the masjid. I just, with a newborn, it was just too hard. That was the most I could do. And it took me some time to accept, like, it's okay. Yeah. Allah knows my situation, but this is what I can push myself to, so I'm going to try for it. So I would say start with that approach of where are you at, and what small goals do you want to set for yourselves, and then have an actionable plan. You're not going to achieve success or change if you don't make a plan, a concrete plan of, here's what I'm going to do. I know some people, like in the goal setting world, they talk about like, post it on your fridge, right? So you can hold yourself accountable. So it's a reminder. Tell your friends about it so that you can hold each other accountable, right? But you have to have a plan. And then one other thing I'd say, again, is just pick goals that motivate you, right? Don't pick something that like, so for example, I know some people love recitation and reading Quran, right? That's the biggest thing you think about in Ramadan is what? Like, read the Quran. Other people's beautiful recitations are very moving for me, but they don't do anything for me in terms of making me strengthen my bond with Allah. It doesn't. But like learning His names, absolutely, I love it. Like Amara Shukri has that great like series on it. I just love it. And then tafsir is like I love reading the translation stories. You know what I mean? Like, so I have to pick goals that motivate me, that I actually care about, and that are personal to me. That's what I would tell everybody to kind of like focus on, and that's how you're gonna have a success on that like journey of growth.
To add to that, right, there is actually a hadith, right, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He loves the ibadah that is less, but it's consistent, right? And one of the reasons that we end up facing spiritual burnout during Ramadan is because we start with Ramadan with this, I'm going to read one juz every day, right? So like for the people that do, like do a lot of recitation of the Quran, right? For them, it's I'm gonna read 2 juz or 1 juz. I have to finish this many Qurans in that month, right? And that's it. After 2, 3, 4 days, they lose that, that momentum that they had, right? And then instead of jumping right back onto it, it's kind of like, okay, I didn't read it 1 juz yesterday, so today I'm just not gonna read it, right? So that's why, like, it's very important to create, as you said, goals that are consistent, right? And then also goals that, when you said motivate you, that's actually the first time I've thought of that, because we always look at other people and we say, okay, so-and-so is doing that, let me do that.
I have to do it, exactly.
So-and-so, but again, the goal is to achieve taqwa. Right. So however we're going to do that, right?
In your personal relationship with Allah.
In your personal relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, as women, right, when it comes to ibadah, or when it comes to ibadah, right, ibadah is of different types. Of course, salah is fard, right? But other than that, okay, let's just say somebody wants to read the Quran, but they can't because they don't have it memorized.
Right.
And then they have young children, as you said, when you had your child, or I have young kids, right? So, especially those mothers that have like babies who stay up all night, right? Sometimes. So for those of us that have children and we're unable to actually sit down and read Quran for 1 hour, right? Or, actually have like a juz read every single day, right? For them, it turns into, well, what can I do?
And I'm going to be real with you for 1 second and just also add, there's also many of us, unfortunately, that we're in situations where we have a lot of cultural expectations that come in the way of the religious purpose, right?
Yes.
And so I know we're going to talk a lot about like culture and religion, inshallah, even beyond Ramadan. But like, I just wanted to recognize that reality that some of us are stuck cooking like big iftar, dinners for iftar, or that stereotype that a lot of us have about like women in Ramadan, that they have to cook so much and all these new dishes that are specific to Ramadan. So like, I just wanted to add that that's an issue also that like unfortunately some women do struggle with.
So I mean, and a good thing that you brought it up, because I don't think that should take away from the spirit of Ramadan for anybody.
Exactly.
Right? And I'm not, today's like episode is not a time where we can discuss any of like, okay, what should we be doing or what are we supposed to do? But I think one thing that would make, people feel better, those people that are not able to recite the Quran every single day, or at least, do that regularly because of children or because of other responsibilities, is that too is a good deed. Right? That too is a good deed. If you're taking, reframe the way you think instead of making yourself bitter. I see a lot of, a lot of the sisters, right? They become bitter about life. Like, oh my God, Ramadan is here, but I can't even find time to do ibadah because I'm, taking care of children or taking care of family. That itself, right? It's a good deed. It's a type of sadaqah. It's a charity. You're getting reward for taking care of your family. You're getting reward for taking care of your children, right? So don't let that make you bitter in Ramadan. Right? Anytime you're doing something because you are in a situation where you have to do it, think of it as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching. Again, taqwa, right? Consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is watching me. Allah knows why I have to do this or why I'm doing this. And inshallah, He will reward me for it because I'm trying to give my, family a smooth iftar, or like I'm trying to help my children with something. Right?
And then you also could, though, what I would say is it does suck, right? Like it is when you go from being like a single woman to then having to shift the things that you wanted to do because your time is taken up by kids. It's hard. I get it.
It is
right?
hard,
But I would say, in addition to reframing it, like you're saying, which is very important, I would also say try to find creative ways to add this extra worship that you want to do in Ramadan into those normal routines. So if you're nursing, instead of like scrolling on your phone while you're nursing, right? You could read or listen to a podcast, or listen to us talking.
Listen to us talking.
Or while you're cooking, have a podcast running, or
listen to the Quran.
Right.
Any
of those things.
And then dhikr, right? Dhikr is one of those. I think we were talking the other day about like what is some habit that we came up with in one Ramadan and it stayed. Right, dhikr is one of those things that for me, it actually like there was a Ramadan where I had to pick a type of ibadah, right? That I wanted to work on and that I could do even without the state of wudu and stuff like that, right? And once you get into the habit of dhikr, it's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you get into the habit. So dhikr is actually something you can do all the time, whether you're cooking or you're cleaning or you're picking up the kids from school or whatever the situation is.
Yeah.
So I think the takeaway tips for today is the focus of Ramadan is to transform yourself, right?
Right.
And then B, set goals that are unique to you because of your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Exactly.
And don't overwhelm yourself with those goals either. Right? Pick something that's small and that's consistent because it's the intention that matters. Right. And the third one is don't become bitter. I think it's really, really important because these are actually the type of questions I get, Dr. Madiha, and for it's like, as soon as Ramadan starts coming, like the 2-3 weeks before, I start getting calls about how can I do this while I have this much on my plate? How can I do this when I have these responsibilities, right? Yeah. So for me, I think it's really important for me and my responsibility today to say to the sisters, who are listening to this, that don't become bitter with life. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching. Yeah. He is all aware, right? And that is one of the main points of having taqwa, that He's aware. Right. And He will reward you for, for having, or He'll reward you for, taking care of your, family and your children and not being able to give the time to ibadah that you used to before. Right. Right?
Right. And also taking back control, right? So when something is not in your control, that's what He's looking at, is what do you do with that? Yeah. Right? So if yes, you're stuck in a situation where you have to cook really fancy iftars, you can't do anything about it, okay, how do you handle it? What do you do with it? Yeah. That's what He's looking at.
Yeah. And then
what you get rewarded for. So just make that intention and come up with a plan that works for you, that you can be happy about, so that you don't become bitter.
Yeah. So focus on the fact that cooking that iftar is going to be rewarding, inshallah, right? And making dhikr while you're doing it, right? I think it's a beautiful thing that in Islam everything is based on intentions. I think it's a very beautiful thing. Yep. Because it definitely helps those people who try their best to do good, even though they can't do much. Yep. But they have they have very pure intentions. Yeah. So inshallah, let's focus on the first 10 days. Let's focus on our goals and let's focus on how we can gain taqwa. And then we'll be talking about the next 10 days next time.
Yeah. Okay. Happy fasting, everybody.
Happy first week of Ramadan. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.